Hello and welcome to Wholesaling Out of the Box, where we are discussing Chapter 6, Part 2 of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Chris was an FBI negotiator for 24 years before he retired and started the Black Swan Group that helps businesses learn how to better negotiate and better their companies. So today I am joined by Cameron Peters, Kaylee Body, and Shawn Bowen. This is take 2 of our podcast because I couldn't get names right. And that's about it. Shawn, why don't you take it away for Chapter 6, Part 2?
Awesome. Welcome back, guys. And we're going to pick up on the last 2 pieces here of Chapter 6. So these 2 pieces are loss aversion and bend their reality. So the first we're going to talk about is loss aversion. People will take more risks to avoid a loss than they will to realize a gain. Make sure your opponent sees there is something to lose by inaction. So I think this is part where I'm trying to think about a good example of a loss aversion.
Oh, I've got one.
Let's hear it. Go for it.
So this is also called sunk cost fallacy. And I've been talking about it for a few weeks, not really putting it together until last week, I think, or the last time we did a recording, that it was the same thing. But what it is essentially you or whoever thinks that they've sunk enough cost into something that they don't want to stop. So one of the best examples I've heard is slot machines. So you're sitting at the slot machine and you just keep putting quarter or penny or whatever coin or dollar into the slot machine because you think that you've put enough money in here that the next time or sometime soon, you're going to hit that jackpot. When in reality, you're just as likely to hit a jackpot on that slot machine that you've already sunk $100 into as you are to the slot machine right next to it that you've put no money into. And you might even be better off, honestly. So that's a little bit what loss aversion here is, where people are probably going to lose more by sticking to the same thing that they've been doing than they would if they just gave up and started over.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that fits. Completely fits. Cam, let's hear yours. What your thought is on this one.
Yeah, so there's obviously a lot of sales techniques that come with the loss aversion, where it's kind of the same deadline thing where there's so many minutes, like Ashley was saying in the last chapter, to purchase this product or to do this, right? Some things that we obviously use are kind of things that we mentioned in the last chapter. So I don't know that, honestly, I use loss aversion a lot every day, to be honest. I'm not sure quite how to structure that. And so I was reading into this chapter and trying to put, circumstances with real estate in there. And I really honestly don't come up with a lot.
Okay. Kaylee, let's hear what maybe you think about it.
Yeah, well, I can say in all the years that I've been in sales, paying loss, which is what it was called, was used in just about everything. That was the way that I closed. Like, do this so you can avoid losing this. But yeah, it's kind of hard to come up one with real estate, except when the market is different and it's a buyer's market, unlike now. So you can use that on buyers. Well, actually, you can use that now. So the market, houses are going so quickly. A buyer, you can't take forever to think about it. You need to make a decision now because the house is not going to be there tomorrow. So that you can use that as far as real estate sales side. And our side, talking to sellers, I can't think of something. I can't think of anything.
I've got a few things.
We use it.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this a lot recently because I've noticed for our company, we're losing out on contracts because we can't beat the loss aversion, like he says here, where you make sure your opponent, in this case, seller, sees that there's something to lose by inaction. And so I've been trying to think about how to break that. And what it is on our side a lot of times is we have a seller who has maybe been with another wholesaler. They've already gone through 30, 60, 90 days with this wholesaler who isn't able to sell it. And they come back and say, oh, well, we need a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 reduction. And the seller in their mind is like, well, I've already stuck with them for this long. I don't want to have to go out, find someone new, vet them, negotiate again. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of energy. So instead, I'm going to stick with this person, give them the reduction, even though I don't think I should, just to get this thing closed. And that's where this sunk cost theory or loss aversion comes in, because they're like, well, now I'm losing out on 20 grand, but at least I don't have to go through all of this again. Whereas Cam might be in the background saying, hey, you were at 60. Now they're saying they need you to be at 40. I'm at 50. Why won't you go with me? Well, I know this person. I trust this person, blah, 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 blah. Even though they came back and asked for a reduction for no reason. So, I mean, when we go back and ask for reductions, we generally try to give a reason. Hot water heater, that was a bad one. I don't know why that came into my head. I have so many examples. Septic issues, termites, flooding. I mean, there are so many. I don't know why hot water heater was on my mind. But, so trying to break that loss aversion so that the seller in this case sees it's better to go with you, even though they've already sunk this time and energy into the other person. On the buyer side too, when it's a buyer's market, a good way to think about this is we had this deal semi-recently where we ended up charging a per diem because the seller or the buyer got held up for whatever reason. And Shawn and I were going back and forth about whether or not the buyer would still close if we enforced the per diem. And I was like, well, they've already put in $1,500 for a survey and this much for a, what else? What's that thing? Appraisal. They've already put probably $6,000 in here. So are they willing to walk away because they don't want to pay an extra $1,500? And in the end, they didn't walk away. And that's where the sunk cost or loss aversion theory comes into play, because we were able to keep them because it's like, well, you've already put $6,000 in. What's another 1,500? So
yeah, those are all good ones.
I know I said a lot there.
Those are good. No, this is what this is all about. These are to share the different pieces of what you see on different sides of the house, right? So I think back on the acquisition side, the loss aversion piece that I talk to, or I think about the most, is what happens if you don't go with us, right? What's the loss that you will gain or that will be coming to you if you don't go this route? So then taking somebody down that path, you have to make your next mortgage payment. You have to make the next 4 mortgage payments. If you don't make the tax payment here, then you lose the house there, right? So I think the loss aversion is explaining to people on the buy side what makes us a better person, buyer to go with, or a better company, to show that not going with the other person, usually even with a higher price, right? So how do we do that? We do that with our credibility kits. We do it with simple as sometimes proof of funds, right? And that's very seldom a thing, but something as simple as that, right? So a lot of people would look past this as a loss and not even think about it as a gain, but it's bringing it up to the forefront. What's going on, right? So if you don't do this, this is what could happen. So I think that's a part that I look at as a loss aversion. I don't like how he uses the word opponent here, but place it with seller. Make sure your seller sees there's something to lose by not taking action, but inaction. Right. So yeah, those are all good ones, guys. Really, really good. Anything else on that one?
Yeah. I think it's less about getting the seller to stay most of the time. I think if you're making a clear argument about why they should stick with you, like, okay, we found $10,000 worth of termite damage. Here's the invoice, or not the invoice, the estimate to repair it. Let's split it 5 and 5. Most of the time, the sellers are going to stay with you because you're being honest. Most people fall into this without even realizing it.
Yep.
It's not a fight to get them to stay. It's a fight if you are trying to convince them to leave someone else's contract. And that's where that's going to come in more, I think.
I agree. Good point.
Yeah, Cam and Kaylee, I feel like I monopolize this. Do you guys have feedback?
You honestly, in the beginning, when I said, I kind of glanced over this thing of loss aversion from somebody else going with somebody else on the contract. And I do my best to keep in touch with somebody once they've gone with somebody else, right? It's really hard to get them to share details, but some will. And I have yet to successfully, you know what I mean? Like the same situation, right? Where they're going to come back for that reduction and we're offering more now, you know what I mean? I want to keep that rapport going so that hopefully, you know what I mean? They can be like, nah, I'm sorry. Like, you're not doing what you said you were going to do in the first place. And I got a guy over here who's been telling me he can, you know what I mean? And he's seen the property, he's seen the everything that's into it. And he's telling me he can perform, you know what I mean? And I have a good feeling with him. I'm comfortable with him. That's really hard to do, but I'm going to get it done because in the end, it's all a numbers game, right? And so I think it's worth the time to do that, but it is very, very difficult to do. But I guess that does fall right into the loss aversion, but I didn't think about that until Ashley brought it up. So that's awesome.
I mean, we did win 2 contracts back, right? Ernie's deal and the one that recently came back on Row, right? Those were people that overpromised, underdelivered, and we fortunately stuck with our numbers, and we still will get those deals. We got one deal and we're getting the other deal. So I think it's a good balance for both of those sides. I like both talks. Anything else on this one? Good. Okay. Let's move on to bend their reality. So this one has 6 different pieces of anchor their emotions, let the other party suggest a price first, establish a bolstering range, pivot to non-monetary terms, use odd numbers. I like that one a lot. And surprise with a gift. So let's talk to this for a second. Anchoring their emotions. Start with an accusation audit to acknowledge their fears. Anchor them in preparation for a loss. Let the other party suggest a price first, especially if neither party knows the true market value. Consider alternatives if the other party is a shark or a rookie. I don't want to go with that one as much. I don't like that because it feels kind of snakish. That's just the way I read it. It comes across like that, but that's not what we do. I do think that we are open, honest to sellers and why it makes sense in the numbers. Moving on to the third one, which is establish a bolstering range. Recall a similar deal. Range high so people will naturally want to satisfy the low end of my range. Pivot to non-monetary terms. Give things that are not important to you, but are important to them. Get things that are valuable to you, and suggest ideas to stimulate brainstorming. I've got some really good ones there I think we can talk about. Using odd numbers. This is one that I have done multiple times, and it works almost every time, right? And then surprise with a gift. This is to generate reciprocity by giving unrelated surprise gifts. All right, so let's go through this one. Let's go one for one. Kaylee, let's start with you, and let's see what you think about these and how these played out for you.
So like again, this to me, this mostly just summarized everything else in the previous chapters, bringing it all together with anchoring their emotions. That goes back to the labeling and letting the other party suggest a price first. For some reason, this is what I struggle with on the call. I always get the people, no, you call me, what's your number? Like, it's hard for me so thus far to get them to say a number first. No matter how many times I reword it, just can't seem to get where are you at? So still working on that. And I didn't get the shark versus the rookie kind of thing that you were mentioning either. On the ranges, again, I like the idea of using a range. So I am going to start using that before asking our $10,000 question. You know, we would be somewhere, you know, between this and that. Non-monetary terms. I thought that was a good suggestion in the book. The book, I think they were one example was a person trying to get a raise on their job or something, so they were asking like for non-monetary was extra vacation time or something like that. I don't know what we would use. Maybe helping, I've heard this from another investor, helping someone get the stuff out of their house. I'm sure we do that too.
Take down a
Helping
chandelier.
getting the stuff out of the house.
Yeah.
Yes, the chandelier.
Take down a chandelier like Shawn did.
It could be chandelier. It could be, I don't want to get everything out of the home. So great, leave everything in the home. It doesn't
Right.
cost them anything, right?
Right.
The moving time. When does the moving time need to be? Well, I can do it in the next 2 months. Okay, that works for us. Really? Everybody else told me I had to have it be gone in 30 days. Right? So like, that's another good one. These are all good.
Yeah, those are good non-monetary terms. The odd numbers, I think you're so funny with your odd numbers. But I was, as you were saying, and I realized, other than this, I was using odd numbers as a real estate agent, because I actually do the math, whatever the comps is, divide by square footage, and that's what my suggested list price is, which is an odd number. So I will go back to that, see how that works. Surprising with a gift. Do we do that? We do.
I do.
As an agent, I give gifts at closing, surprise gifts at closing, in hopes, hey, they refer people to me. But yeah, I haven't gone to a closing as a wholesaler yet, so I'm not sure what we would do for that.
Jacob surprised one seller with the gift of tequila. So
okay. So generally the same stuff. Yeah.
Cam,
I do wine and wine glasses mostly.
So I'm talking about this from a different perspective. So I got this from I don't want to forget the name of the book, but it was another book. It's not this, and it's not any of the others we talked about recently, but it's based off the theory of reciprocity, right? So if you give somebody something, they're inherently more likely to give you something back. So every time I would go out to see a home, I would stop by 7-Eleven or whatever before I got there, and I would get 2 bottles of water or 3 bottles of water if I knew there was a family there. And I would show up to the door with a few bottles. I would keep it in a bag, right? And I'd be like, oh, hey, they had these waters for 2 for $3 or whatever. So I grabbed a couple. Here, let me give you a bottle of water. Not, do you want a bottle of water? Here, I grabbed these up. They didn't cost me anything, like just here. And I'd open the water, my water too, so I could, walk around and drink a water with them. And I gave them something. Now, with the COVID, it's not as easy to do that anymore. So that kind of stopped my surprising with the gift. That's how I would go, because it cost me like $2 or something, you know what I mean? And it kind of broke the ice. And everybody, it's kind of funny to watch too what people would do, because some people would be like, oh yeah, some people are like, okay, thank you, and then they'd set it down. A lot of people would set it down, and I'm like, I always found that interesting. Like they'd set it on their front porch, they'd set it on the table next to their door. I found that interesting. So that's the way I use surprise with a gift. The other ones here, I guess, I use anchoring with emotions when we are bringing bad news, like a reduction or something like that, to say, look, you're probably, I hope by the end of this, you're not going to think I'm going back on my word, think, that I'm changing what I said I was going to do, that I'm changing a price here. This is something that we did not know about. So at the end of this, I really hope that you don't hate me. You know what I mean? It's throwing that out, that as far as to go that you might hate me by the end of this talk, usually kind of softens that blow a little bit to where they're not as likely to do that. I also using a range if we've had a similar deal. I honestly love it when I talk to a seller and it's in a neighborhood where I am very familiar with the deals that have gone on in that area, because I'm like, oh yeah, we just did one around the corner on Bonner or on Foley or whatever it is, right? Yep, I'm completely, it was just a few days ago, completely familiar with York Terrace. We just bought one in there in June, still flipping it, you know what I mean, yada, yada. So yep, it's a similar kind of house. And, honestly, we bought that one somewhere around this range, you know what I mean? And so it's pretty similar to yours. So it's in the same condition, you know what I mean? I mean, that kind of would be where we were at. But let's see what we can do. Let's talk about that a little more, right? So it kind of sets that anchor too to wherever it might be. So those are the major ones I use here. I honestly don't use the odd numbers. I used odd numbers before when I made some offers and kind of watched what came back. And I never saw one way or the other. I had some people ask me though, why do you use this? Why is it $97,234 or $33? Like, I calculate up everything. And they're like, huh. And I don't know, maybe that was a positive thing. I haven't used that in a while, but perhaps I'll get back to that.
I love that one, by the way. The odd number one. Ashley hated me for it, but we wrote it on the contract. And she was like, what is this for? And I was like, because it will set the tone that it was a very specific number, right? Whether it was calculated that way or not, doesn't matter. Like, I wanted them to think as though we had that as a very specific number. So like they didn't move, right? And it stayed on the contract, didn't it?
Yeah, I was about to say, I hate the odd number thing because Shawn will do it. And, you know, it's all fine and dandy until all of a sudden we have to write up the contract. And in our contract, we have to like write out the numbers. So I'm sitting there having to write out this long number because it's like $93,246.32. And I'm like, God damn it, Shawn, why would you do this? And it's specific and it gets people and they offer exactly that. They never offer over or under. It's always exactly that. And then it screws up what our profits are because I always have to like write to our accountant and put it in our little sheet that we made like a very specific number on something. And she's like, what is this about? And I'm like, I don't know. It's not my decision.
We don't use it a lot, but it does work as a technique.
Yeah, it does work. It's just annoying. Plus a little bit of OCD. So I don't like it. I'd rather it end in a 5 or a 0 as it is. So
Nice.
That didn't help either.
So think on the parts of the surprising gift, right? That I like Cam's idea about what he's talking about. Even on the buy side for us versus the selling to a buyer side, we have a thing to where we'll send out a card. If you're repeat buyers, we might not do it every single time, but we do send out a card at every closing that says, thank you for doing business with us. We appreciate it. And it's just a simple little card, right? These little things work, especially for the buyer side. It's that little touch, right? That matters. On the sell side, this could be as simple as a phone call, right? Something as, or most people ask in these scenarios where they've lived in the home forever or as a family inheritance, hey, I really want to see what this thing looks like when you guys are done with it. Can you send me the pictures? Can you allow me to come look at the home? Like, so think about that as even a gift that you're giving something. It's not even physical, but it's almost like emotional, right? They have a connection to this property. They want to see what it turns into versus what they grew up around and then see it to its fullest, right? So think about that as a gift too, where it's not straight like physical, or it could be emotional, right? That's still a piece of something that somebody wants that you're giving as a gift. Whether you think it's not is or not, it is. And they look at it that way. And those are huge pieces, right? I've had families show up after looking at a home and see it turned into this beautiful home after they've added square footage to it and completely redone it. And they're like, oh my God, you know, like almost to the point where they're breaking down in tears because they're so thankful that they were able to work with a company, come back and see it and realize something that came to fruition that they thought they could do themselves, but never happened. Right. So that's a big piece of that stuff that anybody listening to this recording and us, the team, should think about in all future things. The one non-monetary terms is the one Ashley keeps bringing up, which is I got a lot of these, and I think you guys will start to have a few of these, but the most recent one we had was a lady that she wanted a chandelier that was given to her in her wedding gift when her and her husband moved into this home, right? So like hell or high water, that thing was coming down, right? No matter how it happened, it was coming down. Whether I had to pay somebody to do it, she had to do it, like it was coming down. And you could really understand that that one little piece was the next reason why we got the contract over the next person, right? We got two sisters involved. She's got a granddaughter involved. We sat in this living room and talked, and she's like, the last piece, or the same statement that kept coming up. That chandelier, Shawn, is going with me when I leave this home, and I'm going to put it up in my new home in North Carolina. Awesome. Not a problem. Let me make sure we can make that happen for you, right? And she's like, yes, if you can help me do that, I would be grateful for it. My ass was on a ladder over there with a toolbox taking that thing off the ceiling, like guaranteed, right? So keep that kind of stuff in mind when you're talking about, you know, non-monetary to us, but very monetary to those people that are sellers.
Yeah, I want to add a couple of things to
Yep.
that too, because sometimes I think it's hard to think of examples as wholesalers about what that could be. But we had this one property that we actually owner financed out back in July. I got way too invested in it. But the day I know that the new owners were moving from out of state. So like the day before they came in, I went over there. I made sure the AC was on because it was July in Virginia, like it's hella humid too. So AC was on, it was going. The house was going to be cool. I left the little thank you note for working with us in there. Noticed that the fridge was gone. So that was something that we weren't anticipating. And then we had to get on top of getting a new fridge. But that was something too that wasn't necessarily monetary. They weren't asking for money for the fridge, but we were able to get a replacement fridge in there, or help them do that. So things like that, you really don't think about it. It's all about paying attention to what the seller is saying and the things that they're doing, because it's showing, you know, they didn't ask me to turn the AC on, but I thought about it and I needed to do some stuff. So I was like, I'll be out in that area anyway, I'll do it. And it worked out well, and it helps them. It shows that you care and that you're paying attention. I think that's about it for that.
I know this section speaks to bending their reality, but I don't look at it as a negative. I look at it as a positive, because sometimes you read things, when I read this initially without going detail or like deep dive into it, it would sound like a negative thing, right? Like bend their reality and make it sound like it was their idea, right? That's not what I feel like this is about. I feel like it's truly caring, right? And really trying to help people, but paying attention to certain things, which are listed out here. So it depends on how you want to look at this, because of course the way he's playing with it is a negotiation for life, right? Like there's totally different things here. So I think this is a really good section, or a really good chapter. Was there anything else that you guys had about it?
Yeah, I had one other thing about, because we didn't touch on it too much, but letting the other party suggest a price first.
Okay.
We've all heard that, you know, whoever speaks first loses in these negotiations. And I think that's such an old school mindset of thinking about this in negotiations, because as he's demonstrated here, there are so many other things involved. I mean, the number is probably the most important, but there are a lot of other little things involved in whatever you're doing. So I think sometimes you do need to be the first person to say a number. And I think that helps sort of scrape people off the ceiling, especially if they don't know, like he says here, knows the true market value. I mean, we deal with this all the time. Sellers have no idea. Most people will buy and sell 3 houses in their lifetime. They are not up to date on what a house costs. They know how much they paid for it back in 1973 when they bought it, and they've replaced the roof a few times, but that's about all they know. And so sometimes speaking first and saying that number first is going to help them realize, oh, so I was thinking in the $100,000 range, but maybe it isn't worth that much. Maybe it is closer to the $50,000 range, and sort of help them to get to that point. But I think Cam and Shawn and Kaylee can talk about this better, because I don't deal with that with sellers.
Yeah, I'll speak to it for a hot second, because Kaylee brought up a good point where she has a hard time. You were saying you have a hard time with sellers coming up with the number first, right?
Right.
I think you can lead them to that. And the way I suggest it would be, so just curious, would it be tax assessment? And having no idea what tax assessment is, but that's something that of the norm people recognize, right? So, well, sure, tax assessment would be great. All right, so if it was half a tax assessment, would you take that? It's starting to talk somewhere, right? What if we said it was $200,000 and now it's $100,000? Now we're speaking to numbers, but nothing specific to what we're offering. And they are only starting to feed us information about what they might not be interested in. You get the statement like, so yeah, tax assessment? Hell yeah, I'd take that. What about half a tax assessment? Not even close, bro. Like, oh, okay. So $100,000 is the no-go number. You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
So it allows to talk to something that people recognize versus just running them over with a number, and start to get a little bit of a feeling almost like a peck around. Let me get some information from you first and see what you feel like. Another one that I like is they get an offer from an old wholesaler or a wholesaler that came to them and didn't do their number. Oh, what was that number that didn't work for you? What didn't they close on? Well, they said they were going to give me 80 grand. Oh man, I think I understand why. It seems like it's really high. What was the number that you originally wanted to go with that, they probably talked you down to? Well, I originally wanted 90. Okay. Right. So this is just a good way to start getting the conversation going without being accusatory. It just helps. Right. I love the tax assessment one. That is one that is a go-to, seems to work almost every time. Right. Even if you throw out a number like 50% doesn't work, it gives you the range. Right. I mean, we don't have to see what tax assessment is. They know in their head, they get their tax bill every quarter. Right. Everybody knows like it's going up. So you're like, oh yeah, my house is worth a lot of money. Okay, cool. So it's worth $250,000 via tax assessment. Right. So 50% of that at 100, that definitely wouldn't work for you. Right. What's the statement you're going to get? It's either like, hell no, or I don't know. It does need some work. Right. So that's one where I feel like it'll allow you to open the conversation up a little bit and kind of like peck around a little bit. What do you think, Cam?
My kind of go-to for that is, look, I'm not trying to pull a number out of you. I always say that. I'm not trying to pull a number out of you that it's going to be hard and fast and you're going to stick to, right? But I'm trying to make sure I'm not wasting your time, because I don't want to spend a bunch of time talking to you on the phone. I'm happy to do it, but come out and see the house, do all this, and you're way over here and I'm way over here. And just, there's no way that we're ever going to come to a price that matters. So I don't want to waste your time. So just trying to figure out kind of where you're at. And then I shut up and let the silence do its thing. Right. And usually that will, but not always. Sometimes it'd be like, look, dude, I told you, give me an offer. But a lot of times that'll be like, I don't know. I mean, I need at least, and they'll usually stammer around because they weren't prepared for that question. And so they're being a little defensive, and they'll really take 100, but they're going to tell you, I don't know, probably 125, right? They're going to throw it up a little further. I use that one on a lot of calls. It's the whole, I don't want to waste your time. And Jacob says your time and definitely not my time. I only use your time because I feel like it's just all about them. But that's the one that works for me the best.
Awesome. Does that seem like it might help you, Kaylee?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. I think we're good on this one. Everybody good?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. Cool. So thanks so much, guys, for listening to Chapter 6, Part 2 of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. We will be back next week for Chapter 7. If you're enjoying our podcast or our YouTube videos, please leave us a comment, leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing, what you've liked, what you haven't liked. Anything that's helped you from wholesaling out of the box, Never Split the Difference, or traction. We just want to get that feedback so that we can tailor our future content, our future videos and podcasts to you. So thanks again, guys, and we'll see you next week.